Hello, my name is Alan Meyer, and I'm going to be presenting an action research project on student interest with gamification. First question you may have is, what is gamification? Gamification is the process of implementing game elements into non-game applications. It is most commonly used to turn routine tasks into refreshing, motivating experiences. And it is the hottest new marketing trend towards millennials and soon everyone. Gamification can and is being applied to all industries, including education. By now you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with student interest and achievement? To help answer this question, let's look at some published articles that explain the question. The first article reviewed that I want to look at is 4 Secret Keys to Student Engagement. And this is by Robin Jackson and Allison Zamuda. It was published in 2014 in Educational Leadership. And this is what they had to say. Jackson and Zamuda discussed that one of the most challenging and important aspects of teaching is motivating and engaging students. Students who are not motivated or engaged will not learn effectively. They won't retain information, they won't participate, and some of them may even become disruptive. On the other hand, engaged and motivated students want to participate and are excited about learning. Some students are self-motivated with a natural love of learning, but even with students who do not have this natural drive, a teacher can make learning fun and inspire them to reach their full potential. They go on to say that one of the most recent ways to create a fun experience for students to learn is through the process of gamification. The next question you may have is, how can gamification be applied to education? To help answer this question, let's look at some other published articles. This next article is called Game On Students' Perceptions of Gamified Learning, and it's by Patrick Buckley, Elaine Doyle, and Shane Doyle, and it was published in 2017 in the Journal of Educational Technology and Society. And in this article, the authors identify a number of common attributes of successful gamified units. First, students must receive rewards for achieving their goals. And this can be incorporated in a number of ways, including badges, prizes, and leveling systems. And leveling systems is another important aspect, and we'll talk more about it as we go. But badges are typically used to publicly demonstrate that the student has achieved a particular game objective. And although prizes fulfill a similar role, they also provide the student with a reward of intrinsic value to the game. Now, leveling systems, as I said, are a key aspect to the game as well, and provide students with increased status, access, or power within the game environment, and are also a key enabler to the rapid feedback cycles, which is another critical piece to a successful gamified unit. In order for students to master the lessons through the gameplay, there must be a positive relationship with failure. The game must encourage trial and error, failure, and eventually success through practice, experience, reflection, and learning. And this is all part of that rapid feedback cycle. Now, leveling systems supply the necessary rapid feedback cycles by ensuring that the students interact with challenges and other students at a level relative to their own ability. The authors go on to state that the relationship and interaction that students have during the game also creates the necessary component of competition. Competition may be generated at an individual level through progress tracking, whereby movements toward an objective is tracked by a sequence of intermediate goals to be achieved. It can be integrated on a social level, with individuals competing against each other to achieve the highest score. And so that's kind of an explanation of all the main components of gamification. Continuing on, the next question a lot of people will probably have is, what evidence is there to support this concept? So in order to help with this, having another article that I'd like to look at, and this article is titled A Science Classroom That's More Than a Game. And this is by Tim Barlow and Barry Fleming. It was published in 2016 by Teaching Science, the Journal of Australian Science Teachers Association. And Barlow and Fleming go on to say that when all 4 major components, the components that we just talked about, rewards for achieving goals, leveling systems, rapid feedback cycles that encourage trial and error, and competition are incorporated into their lesson, this is the results. And so the results of their study are, they said that there was a marked increase in the number of students who completed extension work. There was an increase in the number of students who returned to earlier incomplete work to finish it off. And students were also given considerably more feedback, enabling the on-the-spot regular guidance for improved work. They go on to say that by engaging students with a fun, authentic experience that challenges the participant to take control and explore their understandings while providing meaningful feedback to aid the learning process in a social and collaborative way, we have seen students more excited and motivated to learn. And so that's exactly what I think most people are looking for, including myself, when we're looking to create lessons that are gamified. So moving on, the actual action research then, the methodology. The research for this action research was conducted at a public high school in Midwestern United States, used a static group comparison by a teacher researcher with 2 separate 11th grade American history classes, and the treatment period was 8 days. The 2 groups gave them a fictitious title. American History 1 is AH1, and the AH1 participants were 13 Caucasian and Hispanic students with 7 girls and 6 boys. And this is going to be the group that has the treatment of the gamified Cold War unit. Where the second group, American History 2, or AH2 is what we'll reference it as, the participants in that group were 10 Caucasian students with 5 girls and 5 boys. And there's not really a treatment for this one. They're going to get the standard Cold War lessons. And the lessons are identical to the lessons in the gamified unit. It's just that it's not gamified. So moving forward, continuing with the methodology, on days 1 and 8, used this time to complete a pre and post survey, attitude survey, and ask students about their attitudes towards school, towards learning, towards American history, towards the Cold War, and towards the way the last unit was taught. And then we gave the same survey at the end, and then compared the data between the 2 groups. For the pre and post test, this was just the standard test that we used for the Cold War unit. I gave it to them prior, gave it to them after, and then compared the progress or the growth between the 2 groups to see if there was a difference there. On day 2, day 2 was used to introduce the gamified Cold War unit to AH1, and for this gamified unit, I turned it into a game, and I called it the Cold War spy game. And so it was all about spying, since that's a lot of what the Cold War was. And students had a choice of either being on the KGB side or the CIA side, and they had to, throughout the game level, break down briefcases that had secret codes to them so they could hack into the enemy's missile codes. And there was 4 briefcases that they had to break through and using a breakout or break-in application. And then they had regular assignments that they had to complete that gave them clues and hints of how to break into those. And then when the regular assignments were finished, they could also do what would typically be extra credit assignments, and that would give them additional points, bonus points, but it would also give them more hints to how to break the code for each of the briefcases. And so there was some extra incentive to do that as well. And so that was the Cold War spy game that I introduced, and that was the unit that was gamified for AH1. For AH2, on day 2, I used this time to introduce the Cold War lesson and gave the students all the instructions for all the assignments as well. Both the AH1 and AH2 unit are self-paced units, and so each day I will continue to have brief lessons and discuss with them. So I'll move on to day 3 through 7. So day 3 through 7, as the students were progressing through each of their units, each day for both classes, I briefly gave a short discussion about the Cold War, make sure that we had understanding at this point and we were progressing through. and then the rest of the time was given for them to work on the units independently or to collaborate with peers. And during that time, I went around the room and answered questions and made notations in my journals about positive and negative feedback about the unit, about the lesson, and sometimes even body language. You can, if it was positive or negative body language, I would mark those things down. So that was day 3 through 7, and then back to day 8, which we wrapped up with finishing the pre and post test. So just to give you an idea, kind of continue here with my Cold War unit. Here was my Cold War spy leaderboard, and so they each got to pick a code name, and so they chose code names. And then the actual, in the first one, their ranks were determined by medals, and each medal was a higher rank. And then experience points, the max experience points was 3,500, and so on and so forth with that. With AH1, there was none of that. Or sorry, that was with AH1. Now AH2, they just got the normal lessons, and so there wasn't a whole lot to that. All right, moving into the data collection. So here's the pre and post survey test that I gave them. As I said, asked them to give whether they strongly agreed or strongly disagreed or anything in between on, and circle one of those on this survey. The first one says I enjoyed school. Second one, I enjoyed learning. Third one, I enjoy learning about American history. The fourth, I like interaction methods of the in American history. And the fifth one, I like the instruction used in the past unit. And so, as I said, we took that and then the pre and post test and then compared those at the end. And the teacher field notes were there's the tally marks of those positive and negative feedback through the lesson. So here were the results. In AH1, the pre and post data survey results indicated that there was a significant increase in all of the levels across the board. So from those 13 students in the pre and post survey, what we ended up with was pretty much it stayed even with whether they liked school or not. And then their responses actually went up for the rest of the questions. And for the second question, it went up by 4.6%. And that was about whether you liked your impact on that you enjoyed learning. And the third question was about American history, and that actually went up by 11.4%. And then the fourth one about the Cold War, and this improved by 13.8%. And then the fifth question was about the last unit taught, and it went up by 13.8%. So definitely showed significant signs that student attitudes were higher. AH2, the pre and post data survey, the data was a little bit different. It was a little bit more mixed. The first question stayed the same, and the second question actually was a decrease of 4%. And then the third question was an increase of 4%. And the fourth question was a decrease of 2%. And then the fifth question was a decrease of 10%. So that data is kind of all over the place a little bit. Don't know if students' attitudes were changing because they're just tired of school at this point or what, but I'm not sure. But it is definitely in the opposite direction as the other group. In conclusion, AH1 with the gamified application, the survey data definitely showed an improvement in positive attitudes, that students not only felt better about the way the Cold War lesson was taught, but also in instruction, American history, and learning in general. And teacher observations, positive tally marks increased by 20% more in AH1 than in AH2, supporting that the survey data on student attitudes towards gamification units was definitely more positive. Looking at limitations for this action research, one of them is the class sizes are small. 13 in the group that we implemented this on, and 10 in the other group. Relatively small groups, so you don't have a huge group to study. And the other part was, we only did this for a short period of time of 8 days. And if you went longer, maybe you could gain more information. And then the last part, this is kind of in the Midwest, and you might get different results in the cities. And that concludes it. Thank you.